Service members, thank you. Thank you. Join the military, see the world. That's what they told my dad. Growing up the daughter of a military man and then a military stepfather, we moved around a lot. 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 3 high schools. Started in high school in Montana, junior year in North Carolina, graduated in California. So when you say road trip, first one in the car. Of course, growing up as a kid, that was always so cool. When we moved from California up to Montana, I was 9 years old, and they said, "We're moving to Montana." And I said, "That's in China, right?" I was so excited. Wrong. I actually ran into kids I knew up in Montana that were at my dad's prior service station. This is just not cool. But you roll with it, and when you're that young and you move around a lot, you either don't cope or you do. I chose to cope, so I would come up with fun catchphrases because you always get stood up in the middle of class. Class, this is Crystal. Crystal's from Mather, Malmstrom, La Camp Lejeune, whatever. Tell us something about yourself. Well, my name is Crystal. My favorite color is clear. I love really sharp cheddar cheese, and my favorite breakfast cereal is Fruit Loops. That'll be enough. Sit down. So yeah, you just learn to develop that over time. And I remember I was always the co-pilot in one of our vehicles because we, mom, dad, 3 kids, and usually 2 dogs and a really ticked off cat in tow. Grandma lived with us for the last 6 years of her life, so she got to drive too. But I was usually in the co-pilot seat, pretending like I knew how to read a map, when in fact mom and dad would plan the route the night before. And during that move from California up to Montana, that was the first time I actually got to sit in the front seat. And I was in grandma's car, so mom and dad weren't there telling me to shush. And I was the child with 1,001 questions and 1,001.5 comments. So it was a very narrated ride. And I remember we're coming up through Utah. "Grandma, what's that sign say?" "Well, sound it out." Salt Lake City." "Yup." 50 miles down the road. "Look, there's another sign for Salt Lake City." Another 50 miles down the road. They're really obsessed with Salt Lake City and telling you where it's at. "Grandma, what's that thing tumbling across the road?" "Don't run into it, it's alive." "Crystal, that's a tumbleweed." "How do tumbleweeds go? Do they pop out little baby tumbleweeds as they go along the ground and then the babies get bigger and bigger?" It's like, I don't understand. "It's time for a nap, leave the seat back." So that was fun. And I remember we pulled into Great Falls, Montana, Malmstrom Air Force Base, which is still a functional base. My dad was an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force for 15 years. So he worked on B-52 bombers. And then they did a whole bunch of military base closures, and then he went up to Montana to work on tankers after that. So we pulled into Great Falls, Montana just in time for the first big blizzard. Now, moving around all over the country, we hit just about every natural disaster that there was. Earthquake of 98 in California, Thanksgiving Day, everybody's without turkeys. A lot of half-cooked carcasses in the garbage the next day.
That's a good story.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So blizzards, tornadoes. My dad said I went through 2 of them with him when I was a baby in Altus, Oklahoma. Hurricanes, Bertha, Fran, and Bonnie in North Carolina. Just all kinds of stuff. I haven't had the pleasure of a tsunami, and I hope I never do. I don't think that's a common U.S. occurrence. But so we pulled into Great Falls, Montana for the first blizzard, and that's when Mom's taking our ankle socks and wrapping Ziploc bags around them with rubber bands and shoving them in our shoes and sending us out to play. We had no clue what we were doing. My brother and I were like, what is this? Oh, but I can pick this up and I can throw it at my brother. So that was great. So yes, that trip from California to Montana was a lot of fun for me. And then it starts to get tedious. And we start moving around a lot more. So just in a nutshell, born in Oklahoma, then Texas, moved to Oklahoma, California, Montana, Iowa, and then back to Montana. over to North Carolina, over to California, back to North Carolina, back to Montana again for me. And then I chased a job out to Minnesota, and that's how I ended up here. So this concept of planting roots to me, even though I've been in the Marshall area for 13 years, it's still very foreign to me. No matter how long I stay here, I will never have the family ties. No matter how long I stay here, I will never have that lineage and those roots and those stories. I have stories of where I am in the immediate moment. I know nothing about my birth. I have no parents or no grandparents living beyond my parents. I literally have family no closer to me than 900 miles away. So to be adrift, that's my life, and that's what I know. And so when I hear stories about you, about Ron, about researching history, I'm obsessed with that stuff too, because I've never had that before. I do know my great-grandfather came over from Sicily. The mafia paid his way. They set him up with a barber shop in LA, so that's how that part of the family came in. But I know nothing of the Scottish side or the Norwegian side or any of those other things. I know the open road and all of the pains that come with that too. There's so much stress when you move an entire family and you're trusting the military to put all the rest of your stuff in a big box truck and send it off and hope that all of your valuables and your collectibles are going to be there in one piece, which half the time they're not. My parents put a claim in for $4,000 worth of stuff when we arrived to one duty station. It was just very stressful and traumatic. So the fun one was when I was 9. The not so fun one came when I was 19. And we're going back from California to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Now my parents, they've been in poverty pretty much my whole life. That's just the way things are. You learn to live life 5 minutes at a time, especially when you're in the military, because things could change at any minute. They could say, pack your bags and you go right now. And so they didn't have a lot of money. We always were like nursing cars, you know, just hoping that they're gonna live from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And I remember before that trip, my stepdad insisted on buying this multi-pack of Maglite flashlights, and those are the heavy-duty, you know, steel flashlights. Could be used as a weapon in the ballroom instead of the candlestick by Mrs. White. Just heavy-duty flashlights. So he bought a 3-pack of varying sizes, and Mom and I are looking at him going, "That's a lot of money," because we knew what our budget was, and that pack was like $39 at the time. And he's like, "I want the multi-pack. Just leave me alone." So he got his multi-pack, and he tucked it away in the car. Grandma's old car. Grandma had passed away by then. And it was just one of those vehicles we were nursing to try to get from point A to point B. So again, we pack up 2 adults, 3 kids, 2 dogs, a very, very grumpy cat. Now that cat liked to sleep on the dashboard, and when Mom would take a hard right turn, that cat would slide across the dashboard over into Mom's lap, and they'd look at each other awkwardly, and then he'd go back to the other side. But I remember we were coming through Tennessee, and I remember for the longest time, I really hate Tennessee after this incident because it was raining. We had cats and dogs inside the cars, but it was raining cats and dogs outside the cars, even worse. It was terrible. We couldn't see, and then all of a sudden, the lights on Dad's car, they start flickering. And they just eventually get so dim that they went out altogether. And then he's like, "Okay, that's fine, at least I've got my wipers." All of a sudden, they start getting slower, and then we had to pull off to a restaurant because he had no wiper blades whatsoever. And it was going to rain all day long. It was just horrible. And it was hot, and it was muggy, and it was just, everybody was miserable. So Dad gets out, he says, "Everybody else stay in the car." And what does he pull out of that car? Multi-pack of flashlights. He did ask me to get out of the car because he needed my help to pull up the hood of the car. So I'm standing there holding the hood of the car up like that, and he needed to get around me. He took out the biggest flashlight, and he's walking around, he trips over something and he falls. I drop the hood, he's on the ground, and we're still not figuring out what's wrong with the car. It's drenching, like just downpouring. So Mom hops out of the car, so now there's 3 of us that are sopping wet, and Mom's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And he's like, I'm fine, Dad, burn it. That was his fun word, Dad, but he didn't swear. Dad, burn it, leave me alone. So he gets up, Mom assesses him, and I'm laughing. I probably shouldn't have been. If I had known like what a precarious perch my life was on at that moment, I probably would not have laughed at my dad. And he stands up and he starts patting himself down. He starts looking around. Did you see where the flashlight went? No, Dad, it's a brand new flashlight. And he goes, well, just look around. Nowhere to be found. Could not find that flashlight. We're under the car, both vehicles, we're just looking around. We opened the trunk or the hood back up. It didn't fall into the engine. Thank God, it would have knocked the whole thing loose. And he's like, well, you go that way and I'll go this way. So I start following the rainwater. Into the gutter. Down into the storm drain. There's that brand new flashlight still on bottom of that storm drain. And I stood there and if I had known what a precarious position my life was in, I would not have been laughing, but I stood at that storm drain and I was just busting a gut. Mom comes over, she looks down there and she goes, you better stop laughing right now. Dad comes up and he's looking at me and he's like, I swear, I thought he was going to square up because he was just that frustrated. And I'm laughing and I just point down here and he looks down and then he just let it go. And he looks at me and Mom and he looks at me again and he goes, it's a damn good thing I got that multi-pack, isn't it? So that was really stressful. And the whole rest of that trip did not go any better. We had a problem finding hotels because we had pets, and my parents, they ended up having to spend an extra $400 in an extra day trying to get the car fixed because it wasn't just a dead battery, it was a dead alternator, which killed the battery. And it was on a weekend, so good luck trying to find a tow service and a mechanic. And when you're stranded out on the side of the road and you have no one, you don't have those roots, you don't have those connections. That is some of the highest stress because you really feel in that moment like you are adrift. And we made it to South Carolina, and my parents' Grand Caravan lost its heating coil and blew a head gasket. So then we did have friends there, but we ended up spending the month of December with friends and their Christmas time. They had to take us in over the course of a month so my parents could figure out the finances to get that car fixed. And I'll never forget that trip. It taught me so much, A, about what I should and should not laugh about, and B, about the fortitude of my dad. My dad is my stepdad. And most of the time I call him Papa. My dad lives in Tennessee, and we get along too, but I have 2 dads in my life. And it's just wonderful. And now, it took a while, but now there's no distinction between the two. It's almost like 2 halves to a whole. And because they're both military men, we see on different levels how they cope with life and that instant problem solving that they have to continually deal with. And now that they're both out of the service, that part hasn't changed. It's self-checks every 5 minutes, every mile down the road. How are we doing? How are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? Who's hungry? Who needs to go to the bathroom? What's breaking down? What dog needs to be let out? How are we going to take this cat to the bathroom? But it's the point is we got there and we got there together, and it was an adventure. So.
Absolutely.